It's all about SRC. Senior government officials are risking losing out on some of the allowances they have been enjoying. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission wants to abolish, merge and restructure some of the allowances in the public sector. SRC has warned that allowances that have risen from 31 to 243 categories in 10 years have monumentally increased the public wage bill. Some Ogina reports on SRC's streamlining measures as contained in the draft allowances and benefits policy.
Concerned that public officers are gobbling up a lot of taxpayers' money in form of allowances, the salaries body wants allowances in the public sector streamlined. SRC warning that allowances have computed to the skyrocketing wage bill due to overlaps and duplication. It is this scenario they want stopped.
On average, we have about 48% on average, 48% allowances on average. However, we have institutions that pay as high as 100% or even more than 100%.
In the draft allowances and benefits policy for the public sector, SRC wants to abolish retreat and participation allowances paid to officers in special assignments, responsibility allowance which is paid to officers for undertaking duties over and above their mandate, utility allowance paid to senior managers in public offices for their water, electricity and security bills. Other allowances to be scrapped are medical allowances to be replaced by medical insurance covers, security allowance paid to specified senior government employees. This will be granted as a benefit, and owner-occupier house allowance, which is an allowance paid to officers who live in their houses to cater for house allowance. The task force allowance has been restructured to only include payment to members of task forces appointed by the President, multi-agency task force and institutional task forces that work on emerging issues. Public officers in job group T and above will not qualify for this allowance, as well as officers being paid extraneous allowance. SRC observing that in some institutions, sitting allowances may exceed the gross salary. As such, the salaries body is proposing sitting allowance payable to an officer shall not exceed the relative worth of the job, and that the number of sittings for boards, tribunals and committees should be provided for. SRC wants the monthly and non-accounted for entertainment allowance abolished. The Commission equally wants the standardization of the annual leave allowance across the public sector to be capped, not as a percentage of the basic salary. Commuter, house, extraneous allowances are to be retained alongside special responsibility allowance, overtime, disability guide and honoraria allowances. Other allowances to be retained include risk allowance, transfer allowance and foreign services allowance. SRC is proposing a merger and renaming of 23 allowances.
You have institutions who will pay extraneous allowance and responsibility allowance. But there is a thin line between the two in terms of eligibility criteria and the reason for paying the two. So you'll find that in some cases, an employee would be paid both. The eligibility criteria in the policy statements have been defined clearly so that you don't end up paying both.
The Commission taking cognizance that allowances in the public sector have been on the rise, impacting negatively on the public wage bill. In 10 years since 1999, the salaries body observed allowances rose from 31 to 247 different allowances in 2019, leading to an increase in the country's wage bill. The SRC proposal is getting input from members of the public before it is taken to Parliament.